My cousin lied to my parents that I was a drug dealer, and they turned me away. 3 years later, she said at a dinner party that she lied about it. 3 years ago, my life fell apart in a single evening. I remember the moment like it was yesterday. I had just come home from work, exhausted but content. My job at a small tech startup wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills, and I was proud of the path I was carving for myself. But when I stepped through the front door, I knew something was wrong. My parents stood in the living room, their faces stiff with anger and something else. Disappointment. My mother's eyes were red. My father's jaw was clenched tight. My heart pounded. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice cautious. My father took a deep breath. "We know what you've been doing." I frowned. "Doing?" My mother shook her head, looking at me with pure devastation. "Drugs," she whispered. "Selling them." I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. "What?" "You don't have to lie," my father cut in, his voice cold. "We know everything." I shook my head. "That's insane! Where did you even hear something like that?" Then I saw her. Anna. She stepped out from the kitchen, her expression carefully crafted to look sympathetic, concerned. But I knew her well enough to see the flicker of satisfaction in her eyes. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice soft, almost trembling. "I didn't want to tell them, but I had to. I couldn't keep your secret anymore." I stared at her, feeling the floor tilt beneath me. "You're lying." She shook her head, looking at my parents like she was some tragic heroine. "I saw you. I overheard you talking to someone on the phone. I saw you exchanging something in a parking lot." I scoffed. "You saw me handing a guy a charger for his laptop. That's what you saw. And that phone call? That was me talking to my coworker about a deadline." But my parents didn't believe me. "She showed us proof," my mother said. "Messages. Photos." I felt like I was suffocating. "What proof? What messages?" "She's making this up." My father's expression didn't waver. "We've already made our decision." I looked between them, panic rising in my chest. "You're really kicking me out over a lie?" "You need help," my mother said, her voice breaking. "And we can't let you drag us down with you." I turned back to Anna, who was watching with wide, innocent eyes. "Why are you doing this?" I hissed. She tilted her head. "Because it's the truth." It wasn't, but I realized, in that moment, that nothing I said would change their minds. By the end of the night, I was gone. I packed a bag with whatever I could carry. My father didn't even look at me as I walked out. My mother sobbed but didn't stop him. And Anna? She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, a small, satisfied smile barely hidden. I turned back one last time, swallowing the lump in my throat. "One day," I told her, "you'll regret this." Then I walked away. The first few weeks after I was thrown out were the hardest of my life. At first, I slept in my car. It wasn't much, but it was the only thing I had left that was truly mine. I spent my nights curled up in the back seat, using my jacket as a pillow. I showered at a local gym, ate cheap fast food, and tried to figure out what the hell I was going to do. I had no savings. My paycheck had gone toward rent and bills while I still lived at home. With nowhere else to go, I reached out to a few friends. Most were sympathetic but hesitant. Nobody wanted to let a so-called drug dealer stay with them. Anna's lie had spread fast. I learned something real quick. When people think you've fallen, they either turn away or step on you. Eventually, I found a tiny room for rent in a rundown apartment. It wasn't much. Cracked walls, flickering lights, a landlord who barely spoke English, but it was shelter. It was mine. I worked 2 jobs to survive. During the day, I coded for a small tech startup. It wasn't the best paying job, but it was something. At night, I bartended at a dive bar. The work was exhausting. The customers were mostly drunks, but the tips were decent. Every night, as I collapsed into my mattress on the floor, I thought about my parents, about Anna, about how quickly they had thrown me away. At first, I wanted revenge. I wanted to march back to that house and shove the truth down their throats. But what was the point? They had chosen to believe Anna without even questioning me. If they truly cared, they would have listened. No. I decided I would do something better than revenge. I would build a life so good that they would regret ever doubting me. The months turned into a year. Then 2. I moved to a better apartment. I left the bar job and focused fully on tech. I got promoted. I made real friends, people who didn't judge me based on rumors. One of them, Daniel, became like a brother. He had his own troubled past, and we looked out for each other. I was happy. Not completely healed, not by a long shot, but I had built something from nothing. Then, one evening, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my younger sister, Emily. Family dinner. You should come. At first, I wanted to ignore it. Why would I go back? What was the point? But something inside me told me to go. Not for them. For me. The house looked exactly the same. Same neatly trimmed hedges. Same warm glow from the windows. But standing there on the front steps, I felt nothing. No nostalgia, no longing, just a cold detachment. I rang the doorbell. Emily opened it, her face lighting up. You came. Yeah, I muttered. Yes, I did. I stepped inside. The smell of home-cooked food filled the air, a scent I hadn't experienced in years. Laughter echoed from the dining room. It was like I had never left. Except I had. And they had let me go. I followed Emily into the dining room. My parents were already seated, along with some aunts, uncles, and cousins. And there she was, Anna. She sat comfortably at the table, chatting with our relatives, acting like she was the golden child. The moment my mother saw me, her eyes welled up. Oh, sweetheart. I raised a hand. Don't. Silence fell over the table. My father looked uncomfortable. Anna, however, was completely at ease, swirling the wine in her glass like she didn't have a care in the world. Dinner went by in awkward small talk. My parents tried to act normal, asking about my job, my life, as if they hadn't abandoned me over a lie. I answered in short, clipped responses. Then, as the plates were being cleared, Anna laughed. A light, casual laugh, like she had just remembered something funny. Oh, come on, she said, grinning. You all know I made that up, right? The room went dead silent. Every single person at the table froze. My mother's fork slipped from her fingers, clattering onto the plate. My father's face drained of color. I felt the world slow down. I turned to Anna, my voice eerily calm. What did you just say? She waved a hand, laughing again. The whole drug dealer thing. It was a joke, really? I never thought you guys would actually believe it. My mother gasped. My father's hands clenched into fists. Aunt Laura, who had been sipping her wine, nearly choked. You wait. You mean to say... Oh, don't look at me like that. Anna rolled her eyes. It was 3 years ago. Can't we all just move on? Move on. Move on. I pushed back my chair and stood. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. I could barely see straight. You ruined my life, I said, my voice shaking. You took everything from me. Anna scoffed. Oh, don't be dramatic. That was it. I snapped. The explosion was immediate. I slammed my hands on the table, rattling the plates and glasses. Dramatic? My voice was low, trembling with rage. You accused me of dealing drugs. You got me kicked out of my own home. You destroyed my reputation. And now, you want me to move on like it was some harmless prank? Anna leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, an amused smirk on her lips. Oh, come on. You landed on your feet, didn't you? You're fine. I let out a hollow laugh. You have no idea what I went through. My mother spoke up, her voice trembling. Anna, please tell me this isn't true. Anna rolled her eyes. I just said it, didn't I? She gestured toward me. And clearly, he's fine. I don't see why we need to dwell on the past. I turned to my parents. So? Do you believe me now? Their faces were frozen in shock, but the guilt in their eyes was unmistakable. My father was the first to speak. We made a terrible mistake. His voice cracked, his hand shaking. Son, I don't know how to. No, I interrupted. You don't get to apologize. Not after 3 years of silence. My mother wiped at her tears. We thought we were doing the right thing. We didn't know. You didn't want to know. I cut in. I begged you to listen. I swore I was innocent. But you chose to believe her. I gestured at Anna, who was still looking bored. You threw me away without a second thought. Emily, my sister, was shaking her head in disgust. Anna, how could you? Anna sighed dramatically. Okay, fine. Maybe I got carried away. But it's not like I meant for it to go this far. I clenched my fists. Then why did you do it? Anna shrugged, twirling a strand of her hair. I don't know. Maybe I was jealous. Maybe I was bored. Maybe I just liked the attention. Does it matter? The entire table erupted in angry whispers. Relatives looked at her like she was a stranger. Uncle Matt narrowed his eyes. You let your own cousin be thrown onto the streets over a lie? Aunt Laura glared at her. What kind of person does that? Anna's face twisted in annoyance. Oh, please! You're all acting like I killed someone. Emily stood suddenly. You're a disgusting human being. Anna scoffed. Whatever. I don't need this. She grabbed her purse and stood, rolling her eyes. Enjoy your pity party. She turned to leave, but this time, nobody followed her. For the first time, she was alone. I took a deep breath and looked at my parents, their faces broken with regret. And I realized something. I didn't need their apology. I didn't need their guilt. I had already survived without them. So I turned and walked away, leaving them behind just like they had left me. The night air was crisp as I stepped outside. The hum of the city in the distance felt more familiar, more like home, than the house I had just left behind. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt done. For 3 years, I had carried the weight of their betrayal. The anger, the grief, the desperate need for justice. And now that the truth was out, now that Anna had admitted everything in front of them all, I thought I would feel satisfaction. Maybe even closure. But I didn't. I felt empty. As I stood on the driveway, staring at the quiet street, I realized the past 3 years had changed me in ways I hadn't even noticed. I wasn't that lost, desperate person anymore. The one who had begged for his parents to listen. The one who had left that house with nothing but a bag and the crushing knowledge that his own family had abandoned him. I had built a new life without them, and they were nothing more than ghosts of a past I no longer wanted. Footsteps sounded behind me. I didn't turn, but I knew who it was. Emily. She came to stand beside me, wrapping her arms around herself against the cold. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, she broke the silence. Hey. I exhaled slowly. Hey. She shifted on her feet. I didn't know. About Anna, about any of it. I swear. I finally turned to look at her. Her face was full of guilt, of regret. I believe you. I said quietly. She nodded but still looked uncomfortable. I should have reached out sooner. I let out a small, bitter chuckle. Yeah, maybe. She winced. I thought about it. A lot. But Mom and Dad, they acted like you didn't exist. I tried to bring you up a few times, but they just shut down. And Anna. She shook her head in disgust. I can't believe her. I stayed quiet. There was nothing more to say about Anna. She wasn't worth the words. Emily hesitated. They're going to regret this for the rest of their lives, you know? I looked out at the street. Good. She bit her lip, as if she wanted to argue, but she didn't. Instead, she took a deep breath. Are you ever going to forgive them? I considered that for a long moment. Could I? My parents hadn't just made a mistake. They had condemned me without proof, without even hearing my side of the story. They had thrown me away like I was nothing. I had spent years struggling to survive, fighting to rebuild myself from the ground up. And they had never once checked in on me. Now, they wanted to fix things. Now that the truth was out. Forgiveness isn't something you just give because someone asks for it. I finally said. They didn't just hurt me. They abandoned me. They didn't want to listen to me then. So why should I listen to them now? Emily sighed. I get it. I really do. She hesitated, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a small slip of paper. I know you probably don't want this, but here. I took it reluctantly. It was a handwritten note. My mother's writing. If you ever change your mind, Emily said. I folded the note without reading it. I'll think about it. She gave me a small, hopeful smile. That's all I ask. She turned back toward the house, but before she went inside, she paused. For what it's worth, I'm really proud of you. I blinked. What? You built a life without them. You proved them wrong. I wish I had your strength. She smiled softly. Take care of yourself, okay? I nodded. You too. She disappeared inside, leaving me alone on the street. The next few weeks were strange. My parents tried to reach out. Calls, texts, even emails. I ignored them all. Not because I wanted revenge. Not because I wanted them to suffer. But because I had no reason to let them back in. They had made their choice. They had chosen Anna's words over mine. And if Anna hadn't outed herself, they would have gone on believing the lie forever. That wasn't family. So I moved on. Daniel, my best friend, noticed something was different. You seem lighter, he said one evening over beers. I exhaled, leaning back in my chair. Maybe because I finally let go of something I didn't even realize I was carrying. He nodded knowingly. Good. Because you don't need them, man. You never did. And he was right. I had survived without them. I had built a career, a home, a real support system. And most importantly, I had found people who truly cared about me. People who had stood by me when everything fell apart. Because family isn't about blood. It's about who's there when it really matters. And I had finally found mine.